Hi there, Stampers. Welcome. This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Kind of a miracle. I'm almost here on time because I have way overbooked myself this week. So, we're going to be doing a fun card. It's a triple flap card. This is something that is in volume one of my Fun Fold books. Whenever I'm like pressed for time or really busy and need to come up with something right away, I refer to my books because they are like 50 patterns all in one spot with all the measurements, all the pictures, everything I need. And the way that they're written out, it's just the measurements and directions to use with any stamp set, any DSP, any of that. So that's what I did today. I picked one of those cards out of that book and I switched it up. I changed the colors, I changed the stamp set, I changed my focal point, and I'm coming up with basically a whole new card and had all the measurements I needed right there in the book. So I have 3 of those out there that are very, very useful. So you might want to go check those out. I wanted to show you, like I said, this triple flap card today because we are using Peace on Earth. And this is a bundle that came out in the September to December mini catalog. And it's, the catalog is a Christmas set, right? And so there's several sentiments in here that work great for Christmas, but there's also some that will work for other times. There's a sympathy and a heartfelt prayers and a big hugs, things we can use all year round, which is one of the reasons I love some of these stamp sets that are so versatile. And so I'm excited to show you how it's done today. So let me find my other one. I need the other window. So this is the window we want to be working with, right? You want to be able to see my desk. So you can see this beautiful card. It's a bit of a fun fold, but it's still super simple. Mostly straight cuttings, 1/4 inches, a punch, just easy. Okay, like I said, this does come with some dies that are gorgeous. So if you are a little more advanced, there are some great things you can do with the dies, and we'll play with that on Monday. And we're using the Peaceful Gardens Designer Series paper. So as I said, it is in the mini catalog, and it's back here on page 46 and 47, and it's actually a mega suite, which means it's got 2 different stamp sets that go with it. So there's this one here, and then there's the other one that goes with it, which of course isn't on the page I'm looking at. But trust me, they go together because as you can see, the Peaceful Garden Designer Series paper, the stamp set, that other stamp set, they all have this kind of dove theme going on with them. Okay. And here is the base. We're going to start out with just a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 layer of Night of Navy. And then I have a layer of basic white that is 4 inches by 5 1/4. Then I have a piece of Designer Series paper that is 3 3/4 by 4 1/2. And we're going to cut it into these 3 pieces, but we will do that in a bit. I just wanted it in one piece because the way we're going to cut it, it's going to make our pattern match up, which I always like. Okay, and then I have 2 pieces of Misty Moonlight that are 5 inches by 2 1/8, and then they're scored at 1 inch. So there's 2 of those. And then there is one that is 5 inch by 1 inch scored at 1. And then I had this leftover strip. I'm just going to use that on the inside because I love to use all those little strips as kind of accents. And then we're going to do this layered effect with our punched sentiment on the front. And we're going to be able to do that with just 1 punch rather than with 2 punches. And I'm going to show you how we do that. So let's go ahead and take these little pieces and burnish those on the score lines. Has anybody gone in and registered for my North Pole delivery online class? That's coming up November 1st. Diane Evans from Canada and I will be going live on Zoom, and then have a Facebook group where all of our games are going to be played and pictures are going to be posted and lots of fun stuff going on in there. And it's really easy to get into it. All you have to do is buy the bundle, the designer series paper, and the embellishments, and you get a free pass into the class. So you might want to check that out. And we will be doing 6 different cards. She does 3 and I do 3. And she does techniques really well and I do fun folds. So fun stuff. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off 1 7/8 of an inch. Then we're going to cut off 3/4. And then that's going to give you 1 7/8 of an inch left over. And I cut them in that order so that my pattern is going to match up when we put our card together. Okay, I'm going to put the bigger pieces, our top and our bottom, on these, and then the middle piece here. And I want to make sure that I'm in the right order, because of course I must have done something to them and mixed them up. Why do I do that? Okay, that's that one. There we go. Okay, so this is the top, this is the middle, and this is the bottom. Okay, and you can choose to put those on with liquid glue or seal adhesive. It's up to you. And as I said, I'm doing these with just a 1/4 inch border, but another thing you could do is you could add a layer of white under here that has a 1/8 inch border. That might give it a little extra pop. But we're keeping it simple for today because this is Stamping Made Simple Thursdays. As I said, I'm going to put this as an accent down the edge of this layer here of our basic white. Oop. Where did the leaves go? I meant to do the adhesive on the other side, but we'll go with it. Wanted my stars on top, but I do that. I get busy talking and then things go all wacky. But at least the technology's hanging out with me this time. Ever since we got the new document camera, I haven't had sound issues that I'm aware of. So that's a blessing. Okay, as I said, these are going to align on here, and I'm going to start out by putting this one flush up to the top. This is going to go here in the middle, butt it up to that. And then this is going to go on the bottom. Okay, now I can see there's a teensy bit of white on the edge, a little more than I'd like. So I think what I'm going to do is give that a teensy trim. There, that's going to match up better. I like that better. Okay, that will ensure that these cover pieces are hiding what's going on the inside. And you can see it's butting up right against the bottom. Now you may want to just kind of stick them together like this, maybe even put Post-it notes over the middle, you know, holding them all in place. And then what you could do watch me screw it up. But what you could do is once they're all like fastened in place and you have them exactly where you wanted, you can just flip it over and then all you have to do is glue these 3 pieces. Okay. And as I said, you want to make sure that this is all the way in there. So you are well into that score line there. And there we have our front, and then we can go ahead and put some adhesive on the back. And then we're going to center this overall as if it was a standard layer right here. And the beauty of putting those little flaps on there first is that this back piece is going to hide the fact that they're taped on there. So there is our card front. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to stamp our sentiment on this little Heartfelt Hexagon. Again, that is a punch. And so I punched out 2. I have 1 in basic white and 1 in Night of Navy. And then I'm going to stamp in Misty Moonlight, but I noticed in making my sample, it's a bit on the light side, and I almost re-inked it before I went on camera. And then I thought maybe there's somebody out there that's not sure how to re-ink our pads. So what I'm doing is I'm just squeezing a little bit of ink onto there. I don't know if you can see, but it kind of looks like little lines. See? But I want that more evenly spread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a kitchen spoon and I'm going to take the back side and I'm going to push it down into the pad and kind of move it around. Okay, and that's just going to smooth it out and even it together. Sometimes you may get a brand new ink pad and it comes and it's way too juicy. It may have, you know, it will give a kind of a bubbling effect and not a very crisp image when you first go to stamp with it because it has too much ink. So that's the thing you could do is you could take a spoon and just press down in it and just try to bury some of that ink until you can use it several times, and then it's not going to be overly inked. I have seen other demos that will go and they'll pat it dry with a paper towel. That's definitely something you could do. I prefer not to waste the ink. So if I can fix it by rubbing it with a spoon, I'd rather do that. Okay. I went ahead and I already mounted my stamp. I mounted it by sticking it down on my table, lining it up with the grid lines, lining the block up with the grid lines. Now I have my shape lined up with the grid lines. That's why we need to have the grid paper underneath. And it acts as a protector to our surface. Plus it has all the measurements. There's a tape guide on the top and bottom that, you know, go from 1 to 16, 1 to 10. And then on the other sides, this has a 0 in the middle and this has a 0 in the middle, which helps you find the center of things, which can also be very helpful. And then this helps you find overall center. And then of course there's, you know, wish lists and notes and things that you can do on the sides. And then I have it on my glass mat. I used to, before I had the glass mat, have one of those fun foam things underneath that's just, you know, the stuff you buy for kids that you cut shapes out of. And you can use that under this because it's exactly the same size. And then that gives some cushion underneath your photopolymer stamps, allowing them to get a better impression. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this second hexagon in half, and then I'm going to mount this over the top. Okay. If you want some more time to have, you know, to wiggle it around and make sure that you are lined up exactly right, you may want to use liquid glue. I like the instant glue, this runner, because it dries so instantly, and then I can move forward and continue on with my card without having to worry about bumping into it. The liquid glue does dry rather quickly, but I move even quicker, so just doing my best over here. Okay, so I'm going to put this a little bit to the side because I decided to take some of this Misty Moonlight kind of a herringbone ribbon. This is part of the blue and white sampler set. This is something that Stampin' Up! Offers for rather inexpensive, and you get a white and a Misty Moonlight to play with. And I wish they were longer because they're actually really great ribbon to use. They're a good size, nice material that makes good bows. Now, I didn't want to have to make a bow because I prefer to use my bow maker tool that my husband made me and we sell on our website. This thing is awesome. So I'm going to make what we call a faux bow. And so I'm just going to tie a knot. So in order to do that, I want to wrap my ribbon around. And I went ahead and wrapped it all the way around all of them. What you could have done is, if you had another layer under here, if you had, your white there, you could have wrapped it around your white and your designer series paper and buried the inside. But I was okay with it not being buried. It doesn't look so bad on the back because it actually blends right into the cardstock. And you can't really wrap it around just the designer series paper because the designer series paper is just a little bit too, I don't want to say flimsy, but it's not sturdy enough to withhold my being able to tie the knot and then use my tweezers from my embossing kit to hold it still while I work with tying this knot. Now, I just had this much ribbon left over, so it worked out well. But one thing you may want to consider when you're working with ribbon is not to actually cut it off of the spool until you've made your bow or your knot, so that you're not having to cut off excess from both sides. You'll have excess on one, but not on the other. This part you would be still attached to your roll, and so you're not wasting little bits of paper. And then I don't like them to unravel, and so I use these little Bic lighters to melt the ends. But you have to be very careful, especially when they're this short, to make sure that you're lighting it away from your project and have the flame going up and away from the project. You wouldn't want to catch the card on fire, right? That would defeat our purpose. Okay, and then I'm just going to take and adhere this right there. And I'm going to actually pop it up on dimensionals, giving it a little bit of extra something. So come on, I want full-size dimensionals, not the minis. And I'm just putting them down the middle because I want to ensure that they are sticking to just the center strip, not the above and below, because we don't want to glue our card shut. And then as a little added something, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of our iridescent pearls. So I'm going to bring in my Take Your Pick tool, and I'm going to use this putty end. And I'm just going to give it a slight little turn until it's got some pressure, and then you'll notice it'll start kind of oozing out. And then you want to back it off just a teensy bit, because as long as there's pressure applied, it's going to continue to ooze out. And that backing it off half of a turn is going to stop it from oozing out. Okay, so then you just push down and slide. Push down, slide. push down, slide. And we can add a few little embellishments. And there we have our beautiful, very simple sympathy card. So that was today's card. As I said, Monday we will play with this same designer series paper and bundle, but we're going to incorporate the dies. And I think I might actually even dry emboss this piece in the back after I stamp on it. So I stamped a background, used our dies, actually used the bone folder to actually curl the edges of the wings so that the feathers kind of look a little more three-dimensional. And then I popped this one up on a dimensional so that it kind of holds the card shut. And then did a little something different by using the dies on the inside of a card, which is something we don't always think about. We think the dies specifically have to be used on the outside, and they don't. We can use the dies wherever we want. Kat said she didn't know about the backing off to get it to stop oozing. That's kind of a neat trick, because once it starts oozing, it doesn't stop. Okay, so there we go. That was today's card. I hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of a quick one because we're Stamping Made Simple Thursday, and it was simple, right? So this was today's card, our triple flap. There in the comments, I did put the link to going ahead and signing up for my online class with Diane that we're doing November 1st. We were going to be using the Jolly Delivery bundle and the North Pole Delivery Designer Series paper and the Dear Dots. And so all you have to do is buy those 3 things from my store, and you get the free packet that we'll be mailing to you with enough stuff to make 12 cards. So that link is in there for you to hop on over and reserve your spot. And it'll just ask you, are you going to go ahead and buy the suite? Do you need help? Do you want to substitute? All of those things. And it just makes sure that you are registered with your interest. And then Monday, come back and we will be doing this card using the same Peace on Earth and Peaceful Garden Designer Series paper. See you on Monday. Thanks. Bye.